I'm Sienna Bowles. Welcome to my channel, Learning Builds Life. Today we are going to talk about biological organization. In my previous episode, I mentioned the themes of biology. We are going to talk about our first theme, which is biological organization. The first topic we have to discuss is about emergent properties. Emergent properties. What are these? The biological organization happens in different scales, and each of these scales have different kinds of properties which are not there in the preceding scale. These new properties which come up in each scale are called emergent properties. And biological organization is not only evident in biology. Even if you get a box of bicycle parts, it won't transport you anywhere if you don't fix them up together in an organized manner. It cannot help you to go anywhere, but when you organize them properly, it helps us to reach our respective destinations. Now we will see the biological hierarchy, starting with the biosphere. Biosphere. The biosphere. Life is evident from the Earth far above itself. The mosaics of green forests are visible far from space. These are visible. Biosphere is the part in Earth where all living organisms can live or where they can exist. Moving on to our next scale after biosphere, which is ecosystems. Ecosystems consist of all the organisms living in a specific area. They can be plants, they can be animals, etc. It also consists of the abiotic components, which means the non-living components with which life interacts, like soil, water, air, and liquids, light. Moving on to our next scale, which is communities. Communities consist of in all of the area of the organisms living in a specific area. After communities come populations. Communities can consist of different species. Populations are groups of individual organisms of the same species, and populations can be taken more downwards towards organisms. Each population is made up of organisms. Every living thing in a specific population is an organism. And organisms have different parts which help them itself to function. Organs. Body parts of any kind of organism have multiple tissues. The multiple tissues help them to function properly, helping in the balanced function of specific organisms. These body parts are called organs, and these organs can only function because of a unit called tissues. Multiple tissues come together to help in the proper functioning of organs, which again leads to proper functioning of that specific organism. Finally, the fundamental unit of each organism is called a cell, which we will talk about now. The cell is a fundamental structural and functional unit of any organism. The cells, there are many kinds of cells. Some organisms just have one cell. All of the functions of that organism are controlled by that single cell, whereas some organisms are multicellular, which means they have multiple cells. They have divided labor to distribute the functions and help in proper functioning of that organism. Cells have units called organelles, which help in the proper functioning of the cell. Organelles. Organelles work together to help the cell to function properly. Finally, to the molecular level, molecules. Molecules are chemical units which are made up of one or two units called atoms. I mean 2 or more, not 1 or 2. Some molecules have 2 units, atoms, 2 atoms, and some molecules have more than those. For example, chlorophyll is one molecule which is very important for absorption of sunlight and helping in photosynthesis. This was all about the biological hierarchy. Now, the biological hierarchy, we can say all of these scales have a correlation of structure and function, and this is our next concern to talk about. Now we will talk about structure and function. Structure and function. For example, if we take a leaf has many cells, and these cells have organelles called chloroplasts. And these chloroplasts and their shape itself, some of the leaves have increased surface area for absorption of more sunlight to help in photosynthesis. And the functional units called the cells again, they help in photosynthesis. And actually, the root of photosynthesis are organelles in the cell called chloroplasts. This was one example about structure and function, how we can see it in different organisms. Another example is the hummingbird. The hummingbird has a unique property. It can fly backwards and hover at place. The reason behind this is that the anatomy of the hummingbird is designed in such a way the muscles of the wings can rotate over the shoulders, helping it to hover in place or fly backwards. And while hovering in place, it can also suck nectar from flowers, which later on the hummingbird uses in form of chemical. It will extract the chemical energy from the nectar, using it for its daily functions. These were some examples of how structure and function can be demonstrated in specific organisms. Now, finally, the last topic to discuss in biological organization is about the fundamental unit, cells. As I said previously, while explaining the biological hierarchy, cells are the fundamental and structural and functional unit of any organism. Now, what are these cells? In the 1800s, proposed by many scientists, was a theory called the so-called cell theory. This theory suggested the same. Cells were the functional and structural unit of every living organism. Now, to watch this video also, the power of your muscles to lift the device and to see the muscles of your eyes can also help us to see, and nerve cells as well help you to process information which is being shared by me at this moment. Everything is the work of cells. Hence, cells are the most important structural and functional units. There are 2 types of cells, eukaryotic and prokaryotic. Eukaryotic and prokaryotic. The main difference in between these 2 types of cells are types of the organelles present. Eukaryotic cells have membrane-enclosed organelles. Most importantly, an organelle called the nucleus encloses the DNA. And other than that, the other organelles, the nucleus is present in all eukaryotic cells. And even in unicellular eukaryotic cells, they are present. But what about other organelles? Other organelles depend from different types of eukaryotic cells. They depend cell type to cell type. In prokaryotic cells, there are no membrane-enclosed organelles. Even the nucleus, which is another membrane-enclosed organelle in the eukaryotic cells that is not present in prokaryotic cells, but just a bunch of DNA. But don't worry, this is not unorganized. Even prokaryotic cells, as I said, every organism has some kind of biological organization in it. And we study this kind of biological organization sometimes with something called systems biology. When we take, like even a leaf or a frog or an anthill can be considered to be a specific system in the context of when we try to analyze the interactions in between all of the levels which we discussed, the interactions in between parts of that specific organism, or how those different organisms are interacting in a population, like in an anthill, how the ants will interact with each other. This analysis is done with something called systems biology. Systems biology. And in the context of systems biology, we can even take a leaf or a frog or even an entire human organism to be a system. Now you may take a look at whatever is written on the board. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for more video about the other themes of biology.